Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in. Welcome into another episode of the podcast, listeners. If you're watching the video, you're going to see me wedged into my little makeshift recording studio, quote unquote, here in this little cute, adorable hotel room that I'm staying in while I support my son in his orientation at Oregon University. So I'm super pumped for him. So bear with me with my funny audio quality this week and my funny visuals if you're watching the video. So this week, what I want to talk to you about is parenting little kids, or I like to call Ennea parenting. If you love the Enneagram as much as I do, or maybe you're learning to love it because you're listening to all these podcast episodes, the question I get all the time is like, well, how do you parent your kids if you don't know what their type? If you want to use the Enneagram in your parenting, like, what does that look like? You don't know your kid's type. First of all, there are so many caveats around that. First of all, when your kids are very young, we don't know their type. We don't know a kid's type until it is revealed to us. And that usually doesn't happen until like early teens, maybe. But also the second caveat that I want everybody to know, and then I'm going to make you to a confession about this caveat, is that no one can type another person. So even if your child is like blatantly, obviously showing their personality and it ticks all the boxes for whatever one type that you're looking at, and you're just like so certain inside you that this kid is this type, you really can't say that you know your kid's type. We don't know someone's type until they tell us their type. So whenever I do a typing session with someone, I always start it out by saying, like, listen, we're not done until you come tell me who you are. You're the only person who knows your type. And my job in a typing session is, or at an Enneagram event, or whenever we're working with the Enneagram, my job is to present you with information and maybe give you a few clues as to what types might be the right fit for you. But most people leave my typing sessions not with one specific type that they're certain they are. It's usually with like maybe two or even three types that might fit the bill and some homework. And that homework is to go and read some further, which I give you, continued resources to do that. I always include a link to a couple of podcast episodes where like a panel of each type is talking about themselves and stuff. And we're not really fully done. We don't really know your type until you come and say, I am a whatever. And so this is another reason why I give people a little bit of warnings about taking tests and stuff like that. Like when you take a test for the Enneagram, usually if it's a decent test online or something like that, the results will tell you, oh, you scored 50% this and 43% that and 30% such and such, but they won't tell you you're a 7, for example, or something like that. So even when you get the test results, a lot of times people will be like, well, I guess I'm a whatever, like, let's say they got 50% 2 and, 45% for 6 and, whatever, 38% for a 9, let's say. Well, I'll get often an email sent to me forwarding the results of the test, and the body of the forward will say, well, it looks like I'm a 2. And I would say, it looks like you might be a 2, is how I see that report, because ultimately you're the only one who knows. And if you read the description for the 2 and you're like, this isn't really land for me, then that's not who you are. So with all of those caveats being said, my confession for you this week is, even though I know all of that stuff and I believe it in my bones, I am constantly noticing behaviors that fit into different types and making assumptions about what type I think somebody is and showing up in response to them with that sort of like understanding of them. And I do it all the time. So people often, when they learn that I do this work, will say like, "Oh, so what type do you think I am?" Or are you just like typing people all of the time? And I wish the answer was no, but it's yes. It is yes. But what I want to stress for you is that I am always typing without attachment. Like I am 100% ready to be wrong about what type I think somebody is. And there is value in that sort of typing without attachment way of navigating the world. And this is the answer to how do we parent kids with the Enneagram when we don't even know their type, or maybe we think that we know their type, but they haven't confirmed that because they have no inch. Like I have two of my kids are fascinated by the Enneagram, and one of them is like, get the freak away from me with your voodoo nonsense. So how do we, parent using the Enneagram if that's the case? If we either don't have confirmation about the type we think our kid is, or we just really have no clue what our kid is. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So we want to think about not keeping that non-attachment. That's the most important piece to this whole puzzle. And if you're working with me or you've been following me for a long time, you'll know that non-attachment is a really important piece of all the parenting puzzles. When we don't have an agenda, we parent so much better. And it's the same thing with using the Enneagram. We don't have an attachment to, like, I know you're this, like, I'll tell you who you are. We can totally use the Enneagram without it being something where we're like pigeonholing our kid or putting them in a box or whatever. And so that's the key to this. And I'm going to tell you a story about one of my clients to kind of illustrate this point. So I have a client that I've been working with for about a year now, and she's got a 5-year-old kiddo who is just super, super sensitive. Everything is like doom and gloom and disaster, and not just doom and gloom, but just everything just is like so bittersweet and painful to him. And so it's a lot of drama, it's a lot of emotion, it's a lot of sadness, and it's a lot of like mom being like, oh my God, give me a freaking break. Because if this isn't your personality, it's just like everything does not have to be so deep, people. Like, let's just move on. Or like this expression that my kids say sometimes, it's like, it's not that deep, and if that's your personality, where you're like, your attitude toward everything is kind of like, it's not that deep, and your kid is like, it's so deep, I can't stop crying, everything hurts my feelings, everything is so hard, everything's too much, everything is just painful. It is exhausting. We really do get sympathy fatigue as parents sometimes when our kids are like that. So when this client and I first started working together, everything she was describing about this kid, I was like, it's super four-ish what you're describing. And I described what the Nia type 4 is like. Fours are in the heart triad, so they have this sense of deep sadness and loss, almost like a little piece, an empty piece that they're trying to fill. They are very emotional, very dramatic. Everything just feels like too much and dark, like it's that like sort of shadow side of life, and they just have this like deep intimate relationship with sadness sometimes, or um or loss, or like, the way I just sometimes describe the Nia type 4 is like when I was a teenager and I would like lay on my floor of my bedroom and stare at my ceiling and like listen to the Indigo Girls, and tears streaming down my face, and just think about like, oh my gosh, they're so deep, they really get me, and the world is so complex and painful, and it was like a delicious feeling. Even though it was a sad feeling, it was a delicious feeling. Why we watch sad movies, like when people, there's some sort of like value, and it brings like this depth and completeness to the world when we allow that negative shadow side to come into the equation. And that's the type 4. And when I described it to this mom, she was like, oh my gosh, yes. And I was like, great. Well, what we know about 4s is the number one most important thing a 4 needs is validation and emotional safety. So don't try to cheer your kid up at all. just let him have his feelings, love him, validate everything he's telling. The more seen and heard this kid feels, the more he will be able to release his attachment to all of these sad sob stories that he's telling himself. And it really worked. Like it made a huge difference in this mom's relationship with her child. Just that feeling of like, okay, this kid is presenting as a four. Here's like the number one tool that a four needs. Let's see what happens when you give it to him. And holy cow, this kid really was able to like roll with his emotions and move through them so much faster, get to the other side, blah, 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 blah. Well, like I said, I've been working with this mom for over a year now. Well, recently she came to a session and started talking about how this same kid, her son, who is around 5 years old, came home, or no, six, he's six now. He came home and started like freaking out about how when he goes to middle school, it's going to suck. He's not going to have any friends. Middle school's terrible. It's super scary. He started getting really, really worried about it and trying to like strategize around it and, have these conversations with his mom about like, what are we going to do about middle school? And this mom is like, are you freaking kidding me? You're 6 years old. Like, middle school's a long way away. Well, saying that to him did not help because he was afraid. He's nervous and he's anxious. Well, maybe you can see where I'm going with this. This kid in this moment is not really presenting necessarily as a four because it's not about super sadness and how mistreated and victimized he's going to be by middle school. It's about how he is scared of middle school, how he wants to plan for middle school, like he is planning 6 years in advance for middle school right now. That is much more of a fear core emotion than a sadness core emotion. And it's much more of a future focus than a past focus. It's not nursing and licking our wounds like a four would do. It's what's going to happen in the future. And I'm super stressed about it. And I got to get my ducks in a row. And what am I going to do? And oh my God, that's a future focus. We're moving from the heart center to the head center. And as we kept talking in that conversation, I said to this mom, what do you know about the Enneagram type 6? And she was like, I don't know about that. We haven't talked about that type yet. And so I told her a little bit about the 6. The 6 is in the thinking triad. The 6 struggles with anxiety often because they care so much about security and stability and predictability. They want to know exactly what's going to be happening. And they give themselves that sense of safety when the world is solid and secure and not on shifting sands and things aren't up in the air and all of that stuff. So transitions can be hard for 6s, new stuff, a move, changing schools, a breakup, a new relationship, like anything that's new. It's like, all of the world is shifting now. It's not solid. It's not solid bedrock anymore. And that can be very disconcerting to a 6. And, as I described more and more about the 6, she was like, yeah, that does sound like what he's going through. I'm like, okay, great. Well, here's what 6s need because they are so uncertain and they have so much fear. Their way of trying to calm that fear is by looking outside of themselves for stability and reassurance and support and predictability. But unfortunately, because the world is ever changing, they never really get that sense of security that they're looking for. But what we can do to help a 6 to have that sense of security is to help them start to look inside of themselves for security. Okay, you don't know what the world around you holds. You don't know what it's going to be like to be in middle school. Well, what do you know? Well, I know I'm going to go to this school. Yep. I know I've gone to new schools in the past. Yeah, you have. I know I've made new friends before and it worked out okay. Yep, that's a really great thing to remember. I know that I really like school. I know that I'm pretty great making new relationships with teachers. I know I'm going to learn these subjects when I'm in school. whatever it is. It could just be like, I know that you're going to come with me on the first day, or I know that you've got my back, mom, or whatever. We go from what is not known to what is known. And then we can go even further with the six and ask, well, what do you know about you? So that it's not just like, well, here are things that are going to happen in the future that I know because I already figured them out. Those are still external things, right? So instead, we could say, okay, great. And what do you know about you? And all of a sudden, this sense of stability starts to get cultivated inside this person who doubted themselves and doubts the world so much that that's like such a missing link for them to feel. And this was advice that really helped this mom. She came back to our session and she was like, oh my gosh, he went through this transition like so much better than I thought he was. And all of these like anxious, worried chats that we were having before dinner time or before bedtime, sorry, have lessened and things like that. And it's like, awesome. Do I know what type this kid is? No, I have no idea. He could be a 4, he could be a 6, he could be neither. It's irrelevant because when a kid is presenting to, this is why I love working with kids. It's like we just giving our kids what they need, and the Enneagram becomes this really great tool of like, you've heard me say this before, a shortcut to like, oh, okay, you look like this right now. Well, here's what I know about that, and here's what I can give you based on that knowledge. Holy cow, so nice, right? So how do we do this? I mean, all we're really doing is giving kids what they need and shepherding them through, these hard chapters or this. So he's been shepherded through his 4 chapter. Who knows? He might have more 4 chapters. He might actually be a 4. And so his whole life will be a 4 chapter. But and in the moment, all we know is that this mom was able to shepherd her kid through that 4 chapter really well. And same thing with his 6th chapter, right? So how do we do that? Well, first of all, I mean, you know what I'm going to say, learn about the Enneagram. It's like a life hack. It's like a manual for all humans. It's crazy and it's awesome and it's deep and all that stuff. You've heard me say this a million times. But the other thing is like your kid, like I said in the very beginning, you know your type. You don't know what the words are for that type, but you know you. And that is true. Like if you're the only person who knows what type you are, your kid is the only person that knows what type they are. And you don't have to ask your kid, what type are you? You can just ask your kid, how do you feel? What makes you feel that way? How can I support you? What would help you in this situation? Like, let your child reveal themselves to you. And this, once again, gets to the place where we have to be non attached, we have to be neutral. Because if my client was and I were like married to the fact that this kid was a 4, I would be using all these 4-ish strategies to try to support this kid, and it probably wouldn't have been very helpful. We need to be able to be fluid with this stuff, and we need to be non-attached to fixing stuff for our kids when we support them. We need to be able to just say, well, what would be helpful for you while you go through this? Not because I'm trying to solve this problem. I'm not going to tell you what you should do, and I'm not trying to get you to a specific destination. I'm asking you what would help you feel better in this situation. And what you need to feel better, it might not be what I need, or what you consider quote unquote better might not be what I consider better. But bringing that non-attachment to this thing, our kids can reveal themselves to us. And the more non-attached they are, the more that they do reveal themselves to us. And if you listen to last week's podcast, in my opinion, these two go hand in hand, because what I talked about last week was this loss of our own personal connection with ourself and over identification with our personality. Well, when we're over identified with our personality, this non attachment thing is so elusive, and our kids don't feel safe to reveal themselves to us. So the more we're doing our own work on regaining that connection, or reminding ourselves that that connection is there, and lessening our identification with our personality constructs, the more that we can show up neutrally, and the more that our child will feel safe to reveal themselves to us, the more that we'll even have the presence of mind to remember to say, well, how can I support you? Or what would be helpful to you right now? Or how do you feel? Instead of the stuff that this mom was doing in the beginning, which we all do, which is like, dude, it is not that deep. Or like middle school is 6 years from now. Can we like pump the brakes on this anxiety attack that you're having? That's not helpful. And it's not coming from herself. When she is doing her work, she's able to be super validating and neutral and ask questions and be there to support her kid. And that's exactly what sixes are looking for: support. Fours are looking to be seen and heard. And she's able to give that to her kid when he was presenting with these various needs beautifully. And it all starts with doing her own work. And that's exactly what I want to offer to you. So just in a few days after the release of this podcast, I am offering an in-person event here in Denver called the Living Enneagram. It's the same event that I offered back in the spring. It's a beautiful day retreat for you to have brunch, meet beautiful other people, learn about your type, go a little bit deeper with the Enneagram, and have some time for quiet reflection and just really integration of the stuff that we're talking about. And if that's interesting to you, I really encourage you to sign up. It's just a few days away. It's on the 24th, August 24th, 2025, for anyone who's listening to this replay. And I can't wait to see you there. I can't wait to give you a hug in person and share delicious food with you and really high vibe concepts and expand our consciousness and do some of that work about regaining our connection so that we can parent our kids from self, which is the most beautiful thing that we do at any point in our child's childhood. The most beautiful thing we give them is our full, healed, whole selves. I hope that's helpful for you. The link is in the show notes, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon. Bye, everybody. The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.